Good day, this is our Communications Management 183 final exam presentation on the compliance and non-compliance of the MTN Group in terms of King Code. This is Group 65. MTN is a listed company on the Johannesburg Securities Exchange and is therefore, according to listing requirements, expected to comply with the principles set out in the King 3 report. They can, however, decide not to comply as long as an explanation of non-compliance is disclosed in the integrated report. The aim of this research project was to establish whether or not MTN complied with the above-mentioned principles and expectations concerning corporate governance. Enclosed in this report is an analysis where a detailed schedule is used to conclude whether the compliance has been met with or not. A decision based on the analysis was drawn and it was decided that MTN sufficiently complies with the requirements of the Audit and Risk Committees, but not in relation to ethical leadership and stakeholder relationships.
Theoretical background. The governance framework of MTN is structured around 7 pillars, namely leadership, legal and regulatory compliance, business practices and ethics, monitoring, oversights and risk management, performance management, disclosure, reporting and transparency, and stakeholder engagement and communication, of which the following 4 are highlighted below: ethical leadership, risk management, audit committee, and relationship with stakeholders. Background in relation to ethical leadership. MTN says that they implement ethical leadership and corporate leadership in the following ways, as stated in the 2015 integrated report. Firstly, the board commits itself to good governance and ensures a standard of ethics behavior that flows from top management right throughout the entity. The tone is set by using the values integrity, transparency, and uninterrupted oversight over the company as a whole. The board strives to ensure a culture that enhances what the company stands for and which encourages ethical behavior by all stakeholders. During meetings, the board considers financial consequences of decisions as well as sustainability when decisions are made. The board uses the board charter as reference tools to ensure they deliver good governance to all stakeholders that is based on a foundation of ethical leadership. Although the board has set up committees to oversee certain governance principles as set out by the King report, the board still stays ultimately responsible for the governance of the entity. The board not only strives for good governance based on ethical values and leadership, but ensures that systems are in place to ensure that laws and regulations are complied with as well. The board is committed to the fact that ethics is the foundation to how the company is run. This is displayed by the board striving to set the tone for ethical behavior across the entity by being effective ethical leaders. The board ensures that the company safeguards the interests of stakeholders by applying the triple bottom line. This implies that the entity considers financial, environmental, as well as social consequences of decisions made. The company joined the Alliance for Integrity, an initiative of the German government which enables MTN to benchmark their ethical performance against top multinational companies.
Theoretical background on ethical leadership continued. MTN implemented long-term ethics management whereby they equipped stakeholders with a toolkit which included an ethical management reporting framework which enhances internal ethics reporting. All directors have to declare any conflicts of interest by means of an online declaration. The CEO nominated senior managers who managed ethical agendas within certain departments. These individuals strive for positive culture change and they were trained to drive the development of MTN culture and make the culture one where ethical behavior is encouraged. MTN continues to enhance their reporting framework in order to drive the quality of ethics reporting to higher standards. MTN ran an internal campaign, the slogan of which was, "Be the voice, keep it ethical." This internal campaign clearly illustrates the entity's objective to ensure that MTN is run ethically and that ethics flows throughout the entity as a whole. MTN encourages whistleblowing by providing an anonymous employee hotline. The Social and Ethics Committee received quarterly reports regarding the activities of this hotline. MTN launched an e-learning campaign on anti-bribery and corruption aimed at solidifying the ethical foundation which the board strives for. This once again highlights the aim for ethical behavior to flow throughout the entity. MTN has an ethics committee which is a requirement of the Companies Act. This committee regulates how ethical behavior is implemented and is also responsible for monitoring ethical issues and behaviors.
Theoretical background, the governance of risk. According to NTN, the key duties of the Group Risk Management, Compliance and Governance Risk Committee in the 2015 year of assessment was to identify, consider and monitor risk impacting the company, ensure that NTN complies with legislation and other statutory requirements, including voluntary corporate governance frameworks. The committee continued to monitor the management of new and emerging risks and was also involved in monitoring the corporate governance framework, including regulatory and listing requirements. Other duties were to review group's business continuity, strategy and process, and review the group's insurance programs. The board of directors focused on identification and prevailing risks, as well as the compliance with regulatory requirements of the industry. As stated in the 2015 integrated report, the board's risk committee comprises of 6 members. All 6 of these members appear to be non-executive directors of the MTN group. Out of the 6 non-executive directors, 5 are independent of the company. The chairperson is both an independent and non-executive director. The risk committee have a total of 6 meetings a year where the CEO and the CFO are able to attend by invitation. Targets as set out by the board of directors were to ensure the ownership and accountability of management, increase the transparency with specific regards to legislative compliance and increasing cybersecurity as well as IT governance. In the next financial year, the committee will focus on specifically improving business continuity activities, information security practices, setting out and applying an integrated approach of the company's reputation, management, strict continuing training of board members and ethic management, and creating a balance between financial statements and ethical management. MTN's main focus is careful management on risk by focusing on the board-approved strategic priorities, which are carefully monitored. The MTN Group applies the following risk management process. Step 1. Identify the risk and determine what caused the risk. Step 2. Continual management of risk. Step 3. Recording of the risk in the risk register and allocating an appropriate level of the risk to the line. And Step 4. Review and monitor to ensure effective implementation of action plans. The Risk Management, Compliance and Governance Risk Committee Chairman stated that sound management, compliance, governance and internal controls to facilitate the delivery of the group's strategy are some of MTN's commitments. The Risk Committee promises to continue with ensuring robust and relevant structures, processes and systems so that the group will comply with their commitments.
The theoretical background of the Audit Committee. The members of the Audit Committee are highly trained, 3 out of 4 members of the committee being registered chartered accountants. Members of the Audit Committee are competent to perform all of their duties. All of the members also satisfy the requirements of an Audit Committee which is provided by the Companies Act in Section 94. MTN also ensures everyone on the Audit Committee is independent non-executives to ensure its effectiveness in the audit policies. The effectiveness of the committee is measured and assessed on an annual basis as a whole and the report presented by the committee was in line with the Companies Act Section 94. The members of the Audit Committee were formally nominated by the board for re-election by shareholders. MTN stated that the Audit Committee met 6 times in the 2015 financial year. The attendance for the year by the members of the Audit Committee was 87.5%. The former CEO and CFO attended the annual meeting on invitation only. Management was involved in the committee but only to listen to the decisions made by the committee and not to add any input to any decisions. The committee was also met with the joint external and internal auditor before or after every meeting held. The annual financial statements were audited by PwC and SNJ. The MTN Group makes use of the combined insurance model and has delegated teams across the entire group to perform internal audits. MTN stated in 2015 more than 370,000 hours were spent on internal audit. The internal audit used the adopted combined insurance model as a coordinated approach to assurance activities. The duties of the Audit Committee for the 2025 financial year were ensuring the preparation of the MTN's financial statements, the monitoring and oversight over financial statements, systems and controls. The Audit Committee reviewed the competence and performance of the Group Chief Financial Officer and the finance function. Reviewed the independence and objectivity of the joint external auditors and safeguarding the group's assets. The group also coordinated along with our risk committee to ensure the maximum effectiveness of all the duties that were required by the two committees. The committee commented on the going concern status of the group and the company based on the review of the annual financial statements. Discussed along with the Risk Management and Corporate Governance Committee about the sustainability of the group as mentioned above by Lionel.
Still busy with theoretical background. Relationships with stakeholders. According to the 2015 MTN Group Integrated Report, MTN recognizes the importance of their relationship with stakeholders, employs a stakeholder-conscious governance model and endeavors to treat all stakeholders equally. According to MTN, in order to improve relations with stakeholders, they began implementing a new quarterly reporting protocol in January 2015, the results of which are reviewed and discussed at the Group Social and Ethics Committee's meetings. The protocol separates stakeholders into 10 groups, and each corporate affairs manager at each operating company implemented greater monitoring and measurement of stakeholders' engagement. Additionally, in response to the 2015 Nigerian scandal, the group implemented regional reporting protocols which will evaluate management using key performance indicators like reputation and stakeholder management. As of the 2015 annual report, 80% of the group is compliant with the new reporting standards. Interaction with the group of stakeholders. 1. Governments. Through expansion of their network as well as the promotion of e-learning. 2. Regulators. In terms of issues such as licensing, which form an integral part of their day-to-day operations. 3. Customers. Through service delivery, the group makes a strong effort to provide the desired services and necessary infrastructure to suit their customers' needs. 4. Community. Through endeavors to maintain high safety standards at each of their sites as well as support the youth and promote diversity in the ICT sector. Annually, they run a 21 days of yellow care campaign to assist community projects. 5. Civil society. Through work with the registered non-profit and non-governmental organizations on programs that aim to uplift the community through ICT. 6. Suppliers. Through the improvement of the payment process and an increase of automation in the ICT sector. 7. Media. Through advertising and prompt responses from leadership to media inquiries. 8. Industry. Through their role as one of the leading telecommunications companies in Southern Africa. 9. Investors and shareholders. Through regular investor reports on the state of the company. 10. Employees. Through transparent engagement with their employees concerning job security and fair remuneration. In regards to the 10 groups of stakeholders, MTN prepares and provides a report compiled from the results of their quarterly reports listing the issues highlighted by the stakeholders to management as well as a course of action taken or being taken and the response of the stakeholders to the engagement. They state that they will be conducting further research into understanding stakeholders. However, the research was pushed back from 2015 to 2016.
Disclosure requirements as per King. Ethical leadership and corporate governance. The board should provide effective leadership based on ethical foundations. We found that the MTN Group did not comply with this principle. Although the board portrayed certain of the ethical values underpinning good governance according to the King 3 report, they failed to apply fairness with regards to the Nigerian scandal. The directors did not portray the morals of conscience and courage which is set out by King 3. This led to the board of directors not preventing the Nigerian scandal. We recommend that MTN appoint a compliance officer to review all contracts and ensure that they are executed accordingly. The board should realign their charter to correspond with the 5 values set out in King, which are conscious, inclusivity, competence, courage, and commitment.
Disclosure requirement per King, Principle 1.2. The board should ensure that the company is and is seen to be a responsible corporate citizen. Did MTN comply? No. The reason we say this? The Nigerian scandal as discussed in the stakeholders section of the report. By taking the decision not to comply with the Nigerian regulator's request, they negatively impacted on the economy, society, and environment they operate in. How can they improve this to ensure compliance? MTN should have a formal written guideline on integrated decision making that considers the economy, society, and environment. They should have the directors sign the above document to hold them accountable. They should ensure that the directors document that they have complied with the integrated decision making guideline as well. Principle number 1.3. The board should ensure that the company's ethics are managed effectively. Did MTN comply with this principle? Yes.
Go.
Principle number 3.4. The audit committee should oversee integrated reporting. We found that MTN did not comply with this requirement as they did not take into account all relevant risk and factors that impacted the integrated reports. They should have taken into account all relevant risk factors should be received from the Risk Management and Corporate Governance Committee, and thereafter it should be disclosed in the integrated report. Furthermore, principle number 3.7. The Audit Committee should be responsible for overseeing of the internal audit. They also did not comply with this, as they did not specifically oversee and approve the audit plan. The integrated report did not state the internal auditors are subject to an independent review. A recommendation for this is that the Audit Committee should be responsible for the appointment, performance assessment, and or dismissal of the Chief Executive Auditor. They should approve the internal audit plan and ensure that the internal audit function is subject to an independent quality review as deemed appropriately. Furthermore, they did comply with all other requirements as to the Audit Committee.
Continuing with the compliance of King Code with regards to the governance of risk, MTN complied with all of the requirements as set out in King 3, thus we cannot give any recommendations to the governance of risk.
Still continuing with the King Code analysis. 8.1. The board should appreciate that stakeholders' perceptions affect companies' reputation. The MTN Group had good relations with all regulators, but still did not adhere to all the licensing terms and regulations of the Nigerian regulator. This affected the relations of all the other stakeholders negatively. The group had an arm's length relationship with the stakeholders, but disregarded the regulatory agreement. The MTN Group should do the following as a recommendation. The MTN Group should evaluate the importance of adhering to all regulatory requirements. The next principle. The board should delegate management to proactively deal with stakeholder relationships. The MTN Group did not communicate the effects of all the operations truthfully to the stakeholders. The CEO, Sifiso, failed to inform the stakeholders of his decisions as well as the repercussions of his actions. As a recommendation, the CEO failed to perform his fiduciary duties and responsibilities. The CEO should be relieved of his duties.
Continuing with the King Code analysis. Principle 8.3. The board should strive to achieve the appropriate balance between its various stakeholder groupings in the best interests of the company. The MTN Group did not comply as they did not ethically balance shareholder interest with the best interest of the company. The company oversympathized with the interest of the shareholders as they chose profitability over sustainable share prices. We recommend that sustainable profit making should be integrated with the corporate culture of the company. Principle 8.5. Transparent and effective communication with stakeholders is essential for building and maintaining their trust and confidence. The MTN Group did not comply as the board did not present the information transparently to all stakeholders, regardless of whether they would be affected or not. We recommend that the board should adopt communication guidelines that support a responsible communication program. From the information discussed in the analysis, it can be concluded that the MTN Group sufficiently implements the principles set out in King 3 concerning audit committee and risk management. However, they underperform in terms of ethical leadership and stakeholder relationships due to poor decision making in relation to regulatory compliance, which negatively impacted the group's reputation.